We talked earlier about differences in learning style. That's another piece that we know from brain research that we have to consider. There's another aspect, and my friend Barry, who's back here helping me out today, and I were talking about circadian rhythm on the way up here today. How many of you are familiar with that term? Okay, what does that mean? What are we talking about?
When you're awake or asleep, it's that rhythm that you go through.
When you're awake or asleep, the rhythm of the body, it's the internal clock, basically, isn't it? Some people are often attributed to have it being morning person, which means they're really at their peak early in the morning. I'm a morning person. I get up at 6 o'clock, and at initial opening of the eyes is a challenge, but once my feet hit the floor, my brain's going. And I'm good till about 3 in the afternoon. Then I start winding down. I told my boss years ago when I worked in corporate that, you know, if we're going to do brainstorming, if we're going to do a meeting, we need to do it in the morning, because if you can wait till 3 o'clock and say, what do you think we ought to do? Ideas are going to be few and far between, and the quality is going to be questionable. So I would encourage you to think about those type things. Evening people, they usually start peaking after lunch, and they're good into the night. My wife's an evening person, a night person. So by 11 o'clock, I'm long since gone, and she's just hitting her stride. She's an artistic person, so she's out there creating, she does these wind chime things, and she's out there making wind chimes on the kitchen table at 12:30 in the morning, and I've long since been asleep. So we figured this out years ago in our relationship, so we don't worry about it anymore. You know, if I need to go to bed, I go to bed, and she's not upset. And if she needs to stay in bed later in the morning, that's okay too, because I'm up doing stuff. So think about, how do you apply that in your learning environments? Do you even consider that as part of your scheduling? The optimum time is obviously between 9 and 3, because you're going to catch morning people and afternoon people. Unfortunately, life is not like that. How many of you do shift training? You have to train people at night or on weekends or whatever. Do you find challenges there? Yeah. And what do you do to overcome those challenges?
Try to use icebreakers that will, anything that will get people up and moving. It's challenging.
Okay, so using icebreakers, getting people up and moving them is what we're hearing here. And again, engagement is a big part of learning through the brain-based process. So look for ways to engage your learners. Even if it's, this, showing of the hands. What are you doing when you have people do this? Are they moving? Yes. And what happens when you move in the body? What happens physiologically? Blood's flowing, your heart starts pumping a little bit. Even that simple thing of, let's do a quick survey, and how many of you have done this, and how many of you have done that? How about standing up? So, yes ma'am.
What I find is I also have the shift thing, and so I'll have learners that just worked, a 7 to a 3 in the morning, and I'll get them right at the end of the 3 in the morning. What I find with my teaching, it really is diversified depending on my shifts, and I just tie everything into stories. Mm-hmm. I'll find with that shift, I'll tie everything into a story so they can relate. And then they're like, oh, so that class is like a big story. And then I feed them lots of candy. yeah. It's great.
So we use stories to engage them and help them visualize, but we also pump them up with sugar is what I'm hearing. I'm glad you brought candy up, because it wasn't something I was going to talk about, but in a nutshell, some of the research you'll find when you go out and look up brain-based learning is that there have been a lot of studies done on smell and aromas, and there are 2 aromas you can easily introduce into your session that will help stimulate brain neurons. Anybody know what they are? Peppermint. What's the other one? Citrus. Those things, there have been a number of research studies. You think it's a mistake that hotels put mints in the room? It probably is a mistake on their part. They're just doing it. But a lot of trainers do that too. And I ask them, why do you put those out? And they say, because people like candy. Well, maybe they do, unless they have diabetes. But the other piece is that as soon as they open that and pop it, not only do they get that hit, but somebody around them smells the peppermint too. Do you ever get those little packets in the mail with little flyers that they're trying to sell you stuff? There's all these little cards, and there's often a plastic sealed thing that has orange citrusy flavor in it, and you open it up and go, whoa. That whoa is exactly what you're looking for. So how can you introduce citrus into your training environment? What's an easy way of doing it? Candy. Okay. Possibly, yeah. I was thinking more the healthy way of doing it. How could you do? We're in Florida. I'll give you a clue. Oranges. Slice them up, and instead of giving candy, give them orange slices as part of your snacks in the afternoon or whatever to give them that little zest pump. Lemons, those type things. But there's all types of ways of introducing little things subtly. Now, the thing is, somebody says, so if I do peppermint and I do balloons and I do this, they're going to learn better, right? No guarantees in life, right? We're dealing with the human brain. Each person's different. We're dealing with human nature, so you have to try to tie all these pieces together. You can't just do one or two things and say, okay, they're going to learn it. They're going to gain it, retain it, recall it, and use it now because I did all those things and Bob said it would work. Disclaimer, there's no brain research out there that shows if you do A, B will happen. What they do say, and what you find with all the different studies, is that if you do these things, you can potentially stimulate brain neurons, which will make people more alert, will make people more receptive to learning, and potentially, if they can match it up and assimilate it with things that work for them, memories, opportunities in their life, they can start to say, okay, I need to learn this because, and now there's a motivation factor built in there. So look for ways to build in all these little things subtly into your programs, into your workshops, and even into your meetings. How many times have you been to a meeting where there was no visual stimulation? Somebody stood up there and read from an agenda and they talked about all the stuff you need to do. And people are sitting there texting and they're doing, whatever they do, and they walk out of there and thinking, hey, what was that all about? Why did I even need to be there? So give them something, give them a written agenda, put up a flip chart, put up a slide, do something for your visual learners, then you do your auditory, and then you break them into groups and talk about how can we accomplish that, how can we do more of that? Because you're still talking about learned behavior here, so give them a chance to learn and to process that information in your meetings as well as your training programs. And these are things you might want to share in your management and supervisory programs if you're doing any of that, or your team leader programs, because they probably don't have a clue. Their boss did it that way, so that's the way they do it. I know none of you do it that way though, right? You don't have to answer, just that's a rhetorical question.